You've been doing everything right for 2, maybe 3 years now. You contribute to your 401k, you don't spend recklessly, you check your account balance more than you'd like to admit, and the number sitting there, 18,000, maybe 24,000, maybe 41,000, just doesn't seem to move fast enough to make any of it feel worth it. You do the math in your head sometimes. At this rate, it'll take years just to hit $100,000, and $100,000 still doesn't even feel like real money anymore, not with rent the way it is, not with inflation doing what it's done. So you start to wonder if you're missing something, if everyone else figured out a faster way, if maybe you're just bad at this. You're not. And that feeling, that slow, grinding, invisible progress is actually one of the most misunderstood parts of building wealth, and it has a very specific explanation. My name is Alex, and I break down how the journey to your first $100,000 actually plays out for people dealing with the exhausting gap between doing the right things and seeing results that feel real.
All right, let's put actual numbers to this, because the feeling starts to make a lot more sense once you see the math laid out completely. You're 27 years old. You earn $60,000 a year. After federal taxes, state taxes, and FICA, you're taking home roughly $46,500 annually, about $3,875 per month. That's your real starting point. That's the number your entire financial life runs on. Now let's say you're doing well by most standards. You're saving $500 per month into a Roth IRA or a brokerage account. Maybe some months is $400, some months $600, but $500 is your average. That's $6,000 a year going toward building wealth. You're also getting a 5% employer match on your 401k, which on a $60,000 salary adds another $3,000 per year. So your total annual contributions going toward wealth building, roughly $9,000. That $9,000 represents about 19% of your take-home pay. That is not a small number. That is genuine, real sacrifice happening every single month. Now here's where things get real. In year one, you save $9,000, your investments earn an average of 8% annually, that's roughly the historical average return of a diversified stock market index fund over the long run, accounting for reinvested dividends. Your 8% return on $9,000 is $720. Total at end of year one, $9,720. That $720 in returns is $60 per month your money made without you doing anything. It doesn't feel like much, and honestly, it isn't. Yet. Year two, you add another $9,000. Now your balance is $18,720. Your 8% return on that balance is $1,498. Total at end of year two, $20,218. Year three, another $9,000 in. Balance becomes $29,218. Your return this year, $2,337. End of year three, $31,555. Stop here for a second. You have put in $27,000 of your own money over 3 years. Your account shows $31,555. That's only $4,555 in total returns across 3 full years of disciplined investing. This is the part nobody warns you about. 3 years of doing everything right, and the market has added less than $5,000 to your effort. This is why people quit. This is exactly where the discouragement lives. But keep going, because this is where it starts to shift. Year four, another $9,000 in. Balance after contributions, $40,555. Return at 8%, $3,244. End of year four, $43,799. Year five, balance after contributions, $52,799. Return, $4,224. End of year five, $57,023. Notice what just happened. Your return in year 5 alone, $4,224, is almost equal to the total returns you earned across your entire first 3 years combined. The same 8%, completely different result. That's the compounding engine starting to warm up. Year 6, balance after contributions, $66,023. Return, $5,282. End of year 6, $71,305. Year 7, balance after contributions, $80,305. Return, $6,424. End of year 7, $86,729. Year 8, balance after contributions, $95,729. Return, $7,658. End of year 8, $103,387. You crossed $100,000 in year 8. And this is the number that surprised me most. Look at what happened in just the final 3 years of that journey compared to the first 3. In years 1 through 3, your investment returns totaled $4,555. In years 6 through 8, your investment returns totaled $19,364. You contributed the exact same $9,000 each year across both periods. The only difference was the size of the balance underneath those returns. That's it. That's the whole secret. There is no trick. There is no shortcut. There is just balance size and time. But here is where it gets uncomfortable. Look at year 8 specifically. Your investments returned $7,658 that year, not from your contributions, but just from the money already sitting there. That's $638 per month appearing in your account automatically. In year 1, your money was making you $60 a month. In year 8, it's making you $638 a month. Same percentage rate. The balance did all the work. Now, let's look at what happens immediately after you cross $100,000, because this is the part that makes the whole struggle worth understanding. At $100,000, earning 8% annually, your money generates $8,000 per year in returns before you add a single new dollar. That's $667 per month in passive growth. Add your $9,000 in annual contributions on top of that, and in year 9 alone, your account grows by roughly $17,000. In 1 year, you grow more than you did in your entire first 3 years combined. Year 10 projects to be around $128,000. Year 12 around $158,000. Year 15 around $214,000. The line starts curving upward in a way that finally matches how hard you've been working all along. And here's another layer to this that most people don't calculate. If you had started just 3 years earlier, at age 24 instead of 27, with the same $9,000 per year, by age 35, your balance would be approximately $148,000 instead of $103,000. 3 years earlier, same contributions, same rate. $45,000 more. That's what the early years are quietly worth, even when they don't feel like it. The national data puts this in stark perspective. According to recent Federal Reserve data, the median retirement savings for Americans between ages 35 and 44 is around $45,000. The average American is sitting deep in that painful early stretch, the part where the math is working but doesn't feel like it yet. You are not alone in this. You are in the hardest part of a process that, by design, rewards patience with acceleration.
There's a reason the first $100,000 has become almost legendary in personal finance circles. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's business partner, famously said that the first $100,000 is the hardest, not because of anything mystical, because of how compounding actually works. Compounding is percentage-based, always, which means it rewards large balances far more visibly than small ones. When you have $5,000 saved, an 8% return gives you $400. When you have $80,000 saved, an 8% return gives you $6,400. The rate is identical. The experience is completely different. And this is where things quietly change in how people understand wealth building. Most financial content focuses on tactics, which account to open, which ETF to buy, how to optimize your tax situation. Those things matter, but they don't explain why the process feels so demoralizing for so long. And that gap between the right actions and the felt experience of those actions is where people quietly give up. The cultural story around wealth doesn't help either.
Social media has accelerated a very distorted picture of how money grows. You see people talking about hitting $100,000 in 2 years through crypto or drop shipping or some side hustle that made $40,000 in a month. And whether those stories are real or not, and many of them aren't, they completely warp your baseline for what normal progress looks like. Normal progress is slow. Normal progress is boring. Normal progress feels, for a long time, like failure. But nobody really talks about this part, the psychological cost of doing everything right and still not feeling it. Nobody validates how genuinely hard it is to stay consistent when the feedback loop is measured in years, not weeks. And there's a structural reality underneath all of this that also matters. Wages for median earners have not kept pace with the cost of housing, healthcare, and education over the last 30 years. In 1990, the median home price was about 3.5 times the median household income. Today, it's closer to 6 times. That's not a personal failure. That's a compressed savings window. You are working with tighter margins than previous generations did, which means the early phase of wealth building demands more discipline per dollar than it used to, and the math takes longer to feel meaningful. This is not your fault. The timeline is hard because the economics are hard, not because you're doing it wrong.
Let's talk about what this actually does to your head. There's something researchers call effort-reward imbalance, the psychological stress that comes from putting in sustained effort without receiving proportional feedback. It's well documented in workplace psychology, but it maps almost perfectly onto early-stage wealth building. You are making real sacrifices, skipping things, choosing the cheaper option, saying no when you'd rather say yes. And month after month, the number in your account moves, but not in a way that feels like it matches what you gave up to get there. That disconnect is genuinely painful. It's not dramatic pain, it's low-grade, persistent frustration, the kind that makes you question whether the whole thing is even worth it. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. That frustration is exactly when lifestyle inflation starts to whisper. You've been disciplined. You deserve something. One vacation won't ruin it. That car payment is manageable. And none of those thoughts are wrong, exactly. The problem is the timing. Because every dollar that leaves during the accumulation phase costs you not just that dollar, but every dollar that dollar would have compounded into. Spending $10,000 at age 28 isn't just $10,000. At 8% over 30 years, it's closer to $100,000 in lost future value. But you can't feel that. The future dollar is invisible. The present sacrifice is very, very real. There's also an identity piece that doesn't get talked about enough. In your 20s and 30s, your peer group is making financial decisions that are highly visible. Houses, weddings, cars, trips. And when you're quietly putting $500 a month into a brokerage account, there's no external signal that says this person is doing well financially. You just look like you're living a smaller life. That social invisibility is exhausting. Wealth at this stage is hidden by design. The person ahead of you isn't wearing it. They've just been in the quiet, boring accumulation phase a little longer than you have. Social comparison at this stage is particularly damaging because what you're comparing is your internal financial reality against someone else's external financial appearance. You never actually know what's underneath their lifestyle, the debt, the parental help, the partner's income, the inherited down payment. The delayed gratification required to build your first $100,000 runs directly against how human beings are wired. We are not naturally patient creatures when rewards are invisible. We are wired for immediate feedback. Compounding doesn't give you that. It asks you to act on faith in a math equation for years before the equation starts to feel real. That's not a weakness in you. That's just being human. Here's the reframe that actually helps. Stop measuring progress in account balance and start measuring it in monthly return generated. When your balance is $10,000 and you're earning 8%, your money is making you about $67 per month. When your balance is $50,000, it's making you about $333 per month. When you hit $100,000, it's making you roughly $667 per month, automatically, without you doing anything new. Watching that monthly return number grow changes how the early phase feels, because you're not just watching a number inch toward a distant goal, you're watching a second income stream slowly come to life. And that framing, even when the number is small, makes the process feel less like deprivation and more like construction. The other shift worth sitting with, the first $100,000 is not the destination. It's the tipping point where the math stops working against your psychology and starts working with it. Everything you're doing right now, the quiet months, the boring contributions, the invisible compounding, is building the foundation that makes every future dollar work harder than the one before it. The hardest part isn't the discipline, it's the patience required to trust a process that doesn't give you emotional confirmation for years. And understanding that the silence isn't failure, it's just physics, changes everything about how you carry this.
If you're somewhere in the middle of this right now, somewhere between $0 and $100,000, I want you to hear this clearly. The fact that it feels slow doesn't mean it's broken. It means you're in the phase of building that everyone goes through and almost nobody describes honestly. Keep the contributions automatic so you don't have to make the decision every month. Track your monthly return generated, not just your balance. Let time do the heavy lifting you can't feel yet. And check your progress in years, not months, because the feedback loop on real wealth building is long, and that's not a flaw. That's just how it works. If this helped you make sense of where you are right now, hit the like button. It takes a second, and it genuinely helps this channel reach more people who need to hear this. If you want more of these honest, grounded conversations about how money actually works and how it actually feels, subscribe. No hype, just the real stuff. And leave a comment if you're in the middle of this journey. Tell me where you are. I read every single one. You're further along than you feel.